Today on Locked On Canadiens, 4 out of 6 points on the road. We can't be complaining, but because we're Habs fans, yes, we are.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Locked On Canadiens. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Laura Saba, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined for the first time in a while by my wonderful co-host, Ian Boisvert, who is still alive. He still exists. I have not killed him. I know lots of people have been wondering where he was. He's here. This is our 1400th episode. So, when I say we're here for you every day, we are here for you every day. Ian, how are you doing? And what are your thoughts on the strong starts that the Canadiens have put together?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little tired, putting in a lot of extra hours work going on right now. But yeah, no, I mean, the Canadiens, I got, to be able to follow that along, they're off to a pretty good start. I can't complain too much about what's going on, but as you joked, we will find things to complain about. It's kind of our job here.
Yes.
And there's enough. While there are, and we'll do some fun positives at the end of the show as well, but there are some things they got to clean up.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to do a recap of the week in our first segment. And then in our second segment, we're going to talk about things that maybe aren't going as great as we would like them. Again, this is not like a complain fest or anything like that. There's just some things that the Canadiens are going to need to tighten up if they're going to take the next step this year. And then there have also been a lot of positives in the first three games. So we're going to talk about that in our final segment. So real quick, we're going to talk about the Chicago game because it was a game that occurred. It is a game that happened in history. It's really hard to kind of assess that game very well because it was just such a mess in terms of there was no momentum. There was no rhythm. There was constant. It was a constant parade to the penalty box. And I really think, though, that at the end of the day, good teams find a way to win. And that's what happened. And that's what happened against Detroit, and that's what happened against Chicago for very different reasons. Ian, is that your read too on this?
Yeah, I think so. I completely echo the point that the script of that game makes it very difficult to assess a lot of things about that game. I found myself, with the amount of power plays the Canadiens had, and we'll talk about the power play later, I found myself a little frustrated because it meant that the Canadiens couldn't see some of their better players that night. Like Mike Matheson was among the Canadiens' best players on Saturday against Chicago, and we didn't get to see him play all that much because they were on the power play the whole time. That I found to be a little frustrating. I thought Arber Xhekaj, in the minutes he played, was so efficient and so strong at just doing the things we need him to do for that pair to be successful. Didn't get to see him a lot because of the fact that he's not on a power play. He's not even on a penalty kill at the moment. So even if the Canadiens were in the box, you weren't seeing him. So I completely echo the idea that it's very difficult to take anything out of that game where the Canadiens spent about 20 minutes on special teams. It's really complicated to look at it and go, yes, I figured this out. This team did this. The only thing we know is that they have two power play units and played them a lot.
And I think for me, the thing was, it wasn't just that there were just so many power play minutes. It was that it was the frequency of them. I think neither team was able to establish any kind of identity within that game, right? Other than the Chicago Blackhawks establishing the identity that they cannot stay out of the box. So it was really hard. But I do kind of want to go back to the rest of the week as well, because I think the best game that they played was the one against Toronto. It is the one with the worst score. It's 5-2, but that score was not at all reflective of what happened on the ice. That game-winning goal that made it 3-2 for Toronto, Laine Hudson's stick broke, right? But the rest of the time, this is a team that's supposed to be much better than they are, and they had them hemmed into their own zone. They were giving Toronto problems, right? Toronto was not able to solve the Montreal Canadiens, and the two goals that came after that game winner were on empty nets. You are never going to convince me that the Canadiens deserve to lose that game. And you're never going to convince me that that's an indication that the Canadiens are not good enough. And I know there's people that have been arguing with me since I said this on Wednesday night, but the Canadiens were really good in that game. And if you can't see that, you're not going to be enjoying the rest of the season, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's also weird stuff happens on the first night of the season, man. Did you see that the Penguins shut out the Rangers on opening night? Do we expect that to happen every night? No. In fact, the next time they played each other, the Rangers kicked them up and down the ice. You know, Toronto, for example, they beat Montreal in that game despite not playing their best game. And then on Saturday against Detroit, they go up 2-0 and end up losing 6-3 to the Red Wings, who looked horrible against Montreal this week. So we're still in a time where we're figuring teams out. Teams are still figuring each other out. They're still kind of getting their legs back under them. I thought everybody after that game in Toronto understood that they played really well, that they did the little things that got them into position, and it was just one play that blew up that cost them.
Yeah.
I think you play that game 10 times, they probably win 7 or 8 of them just because of the way that hockey is. They lost this one. That's going to happen. To the same way that the Detroit game wasn't their best game, and the score kind of didn't really reflect that. I still think Montreal did enough to warrant winning that game against Detroit, but it wasn't as convincing as the score would have indicated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was the thing. Like, they were on the second night of a back-to-back. There was a point in the game towards the end of the third period where they really did look like they were skating in mud, right? And Detroit came out with a lot of energy. It's just that the Montreal Canadiens were so quick to capitalize. They were just they pounced on those opportunities, right? Like, they were so ready. And for me, when you look at that, they were so ready. They knew what it was going to take to win, even if they weren't the better team on that night. And to me, that's also an indication of how far this team has come year over year, right? Just the ability to be in the right place at the right time, for everything to hit only in the moments that you need them to hit. And that was huge for the Montreal Canadiens. And for me, I look at that and I'm like, this team's going to be fine if they're able to be that. Like, how many times last year in the early going, right? Like the first 20 games, we talked about how nobody knew where anyone else was on the ice. Right? It looked like they had zero chemistry. Nobody knew where they were supposed to be. Nobody knew what they were supposed to be doing. Whereas in this case, like, everyone knew what they were supposed to be doing. And when they failed, this is crucial, somebody else was there to step up. And I think that was, they kind of know, they know how to play with each other at this point. And I think that, you can't expect them to play very well on the second night of a back-to-back, particularly against a team opening at home with their centennial season opener. It's a big deal. It's an emotional night for them. Like, they're gonna be coming at you hard. But the Montreal Canadiens, they were able to convert, is all I'm gonna say.
Yes, and I think the Canadiens might be the first and only team in history moving forward where their first 2 games of the season were centennial home openers for their opponent. That was the case for Detroit. That was the case for Chicago, which I find to be kind of funny. Like, that's never going to happen again. No team is ever going to be able to do that. I thought that was, the Canadiens walked into hostile environments. Actually, last year too, their second game of last year was the Bruins home opener in their centennial season. That one went a little bit differently than these two did, but it would be really easy to just look at these and go, oh, the Canadiens have they struggled in those games. Do you have a star of the week to wrap on here? Do you have someone that stood above the rest?
Yeah, I'm gonna say Zach Bolduc. It's an easy one. 4 points in 3 games. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's a good one. I'll give it to Nick Suzuki. He's got assists on the last 4 Canadiens goals. 5 of their last 6 goals have come off of a Nick Suzuki pass. I think the last 2 games have run through that guy, which is just awesome. He's got 5 assists in 3 games. I believe he's as of this recording, tied for the league lead in assists. So, Nick Suzuki, I mean, the guy just, if we were wondering, was last year the outlier? Is that one the fluke? Is he going to come back down to earth? There's no really indication of that. And that line really hasn't even cooked at 5-on-5 yet. Like, we're still waiting for them to figure it out fully at 5-on-5. And Nick Suzuki's still 5 points in 3 games. Like, really, really impressive so far from him.
Yeah. So we are going to talk about that first line. We're going to talk about the power play. We're going to talk a little bit about Patrick Laine, and that's all coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadian. But first, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives just like you and me. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can also find all of the little things that are causing you to spend so much money. For me, it's the little treats, it's the incidentals, it's the little daily things that were adding up to a whole lot. And without Monarch Money, I wasn't going to be able to see that. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's right. You got to go to your browser to get the code to get the half off. 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right. As we are Montreal Canadiens fans, obviously we have found fault with numerous aspects of their game. However, I will say that we are being a lot more chill about it. Right now, we're just here to point out things that they're going to need to do better if they're going to have a strong season. I feel like looking at the way that they've played in the first 3 games, there are a couple of things. Like I feel like it took longer than I expected for either Slav or Cole Caulfield to register a goal, right? It took longer than I expected. Not like the power play is not clicking as I expected, given the number of options are on there. And it does feel that while I understand what Marty is doing with the way that he's balanced out his lines, it does feel like Patrick Laine is being left out in the cold a little bit. So would you agree with that? Is there anything else that you think like the Canadiens need to kind of figure out?
Let me ask a question. So the penalty kill, I know I'm kind of changing gears on this, but the penalty kill, how have we felt about that so far? Like, are
I
you
liked it.
confident in the penalty kill?
I actually really liked it, to be honest, so far. I might be alone on this, but I felt that they were very aggressive on the penalty kill. I feel like they're playing very confidently. I like seeing Alex Newhook there, and it's just like, to me, I feel fine about it. I feel safe with it. What about you?
Yeah, as do I. I think I'm just trying to do some quick math here. I know, promised I wouldn't do math, but here we are. The penalty kill is 8 for 10, 80% on
Yeah.
the season so far. One shorthanded goal. Their first goal of the season was a shorty by Oliver Kapanen. Their power play went 2 for 10 against Chicago. It went 1 for 3 against Detroit and 0 for 2 against Toronto. That comes to, if my math is correct here, 3 for 15, which is 1 for 5, which is 20%. Just about. So their special teams index is 100%, which is when you add both of those things together. That's what you're aiming for, is 100%.
Yes.
They're there. But that Chicago game still felt really crummy, didn't it?
Yes.
And I think
It
there's
felt
room.
very off.
Yeah, there's room for both of those feelings, I think. Because in that game, if that power play, if they went 2 for 4 and won on a goal with 15 seconds left, we're feeling a little bit differently. We're going, man, yes, the percentage is better, but also they didn't spend an entire period of the game on the power play. Against Chicago, they did. And they just, I found that they were pushing things a lot. They were forcing things, they were forcing passes, they were forcing shots. And I just found that was not and cannot be a way that those two units should generate offense. How much longer can they go at this? I won't even say rate, because the rate is good. It's 20%. How much longer can they go with this sort of look that they might not be totally in sync with one another before Marty starts to change things?
That's an interesting question because I think that like the problem that I see with this is that you look at all the guys they have on the power play and all you see is options. All you see is guys that can do things, right? Like there's nobody on there that you think like this guy can't generate offense, right?
Mhm.
And so like essentially it's going to have to be a mix and match where you remove some guys from the top power play unit and put them on the second and vice versa. So I think you have to give it maybe 5 games and then you start changing things. Now, knowing Marty, like he might get exasperated in the middle of a game and just change things around, right?
Yeah. Might.
So if I'm
I
Marty, I give it until like the next 2 games and then I start making changes.
Yeah. I think where I struggle with this is that the point of having both of these units built this way was that if one of them wasn't going, he didn't have to shuffle anything. He had another unit to just flip over the boards. Suzuki, your unit's not getting it done. Okay, here comes Dobson, Laine, Demidov, Doc, Gallic. Like that line is, you know what I mean? Like that was supposed to be their antidote for
Yes.
power play don't work. What I found interesting, the Canadiens in that game on Saturday had a 33-second 5-on-3, and this is the unit that Marty sent over the boards. Suzuki, Caulfield, Demidov, Laine, Dobson. Sort of a Franken unit between those two. I found it interesting there was no Laine Hudson there. I think that's because Laine was in the one-timer shot, and Laine feels much better when that puck is coming from a right-handed shooter. Right-handed passer. So Dobson being right-handed, getting that puck to Laine, it feels different on his stick. It's easier for him to one-time.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of rumbling right now from Canadiens fans that we need to abandon this whole they have 2 strong units and instead go with one that one that is a 1A, that they have no issue with saying this is our first unit. I don't know that I'm there yet. I want to see this play out more. If anything, they have a lot of tape after that game in Chicago to unpack and see what went well and what didn't.
Yeah. And that's what you would want them to do, right? And so I think for me, like the biggest one is that I want them to be able to use them interchangeably, not like as in a power play 1 unit and a power play 2 unit, more as in like this time I'm sending this one defenseman out with these guys. This time I have no defenseman on the power play, right? Like this is my so I feel like right now I want to see how it plays out a little bit. I want people to like get their legs, kind of figure it out. And so this is going to bring me to another thing that we're going to spend the rest of this time talking about, not very long. But Patrick Laine. So far, I already have a whole bunch of people just saying that he's a waste of space or things like that. I think that the problem is that I know what Marty's doing with balancing those lines out with a defensive person, somebody who's strong offensively and all of that. But that's like the fourth line is not Patrick Laine's optimal spot.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I think Patty would be the first person to tell you that. I think as the president of the Patrick Laine fan club, I struggle with what we do with this player, because can you play him on the first line? Maybe,
no,
but you probably
yes.
shouldn't, because that line is already cooking. And
if you put someone else on that line, it's going to be somebody like Bolduc or Ivan Demidov.
Right. So would you play him on the second line? Maybe, but we've experimented with that and it hasn't worked. So at 5-on-5, this is where he ends up. I don't know that there's a better place for him. Where I struggle is if he's on a power play unit and the power play unit is not starting, which that unit doesn't do very often. The only time that they started a power play
was the 5-on-3.
Well, that's the only, and that was, he started on that. But what I mean was that whole unit, the only one that they started was a power play that was drawn by a long shift from the first line. So there was no point. They wouldn't be able to send them back out. They were gassed. They needed a second. So he's getting 45 maybe seconds out of each power play. And it's not something that I think is working right now. That said, it's way too early to abandon this idea. But Laine needs to play better at 5-on-5, if he wants to be a better option for Marty St. Louis and not sit on the bench in moments where they could use a goal like him, or a goal scorer like him. I love this guy. I love everything about this player. But with all that said, like, I think his utilization makes sense for the kind of player he is in this moment. It's why I'm starting, there was a lot of thoughts, well, he would like to resign in Montreal and do what? Play the fourth line and 10% of each power play? Like, that's not, I don't think that's reasonable either. So I'm just sort of, he needs to, it's not hurting them right now, and to the extent that like it would become a drag on this team, but it's really tough to find a spot for him. And I love the guy. Like, I think the Canadiens have kind of built a future where that is Laine proof, that they don't need him to be there. It would be nice if he was there in the capacity that he can be, but they're not reliant on it.
True. I don't know. I think that maybe we wait 10 games before we
Yeah, let's get out of the first month of the season before we start declaring this and that.
Before we fight each other.
Right.
We got to calm down. All right. Up next, we're going to talk about the positives we've seen through the first 3 games. That's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, let's talk about all the good things that happened in last week's games. I was going to say last week's game, but there were 3 of them. So, what jumped out at you as one of the biggest positives?
I need a graphic for this one, Laura. It is our Mike meter.
I knew it was coming.
Contract year Mike Matheson might be a different animal. I have loved every second of every shift that I've seen from Mike Matheson to start this season. Our number goes to 5. I'm giving him a 19. I'm pointing on Laura's other shoulder.
Yes.
I just think that he is the most refined and effective version of himself. I was really nervous about that Dobson-Hudson pairing. It rules.
The Dobson-Matheson pairing, you mean?
Yeah. What did I say?
Hudson.
Yeah. Whatever. It's it's the son. I call it my 2 sons pairing. My 2 sons. Those are my guys.
Dobson and Matheson.
Right. And if Hudson was there, that counts too. Like, it was like when they had, they have Anderson, Weidman, like they had all these just dudes playing for their team. I think that he's doing everything he can in his power to stay a Montreal Canadien. I think it matters this much to this guy. It's a business and a numbers game, so I really struggle to find a way that he sticks around beyond this season.
He's going to accept $3 million or less. He's going to do it.
It's not even really about that for me, though. It's like, where do you put him?
It's where do you put him? No, I absolutely agree with you. But here's the thing, like from, the middle of the summer, since we started talking about what the lines are going to look like this year, everybody was like, what is the point of putting Mike Matheson with Noah Dobson? This is going to be a disaster. And guess what? It has not been a disaster. I've
rules.
I've loved what I've seen of both of those players. Obviously, Mike Matheson is like a different animal this year. And I really I do think though, that maybe it's just the assignment. Like he doesn't have to babysit, right? No. He doesn't have to make up for someone's shortcomings. This is Mike Matheson unleashed, and Noah Dobson. So too, I haven't seen any of the things. I know it's been 3 games, but I haven't seen any of the things that people were complaining about before he came to Montreal, right? He was coasting through the preseason, but let's be honest, who was?
I was going to say the same thing. His preseason was very ho hum. It was
Yes.
like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Regular season started, dude locked in. Like, he
Yeah.
looks great.
Exactly. So like that's a huge positive for me, right? And like Nick Suzuki, like getting all those points and going completely unnoticed. Like nobody's talking about it. You're the only one who's talking about it, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got to give my props to Mike Matheson. We are Magic Mike and Tragic Mike defenders on this program, and
Yes.
always will be. I was listening to Game Over after the game on Saturday, and unprompted, Andrew Berkshire brought up Magic Mike, and which made me feel like we have left a mark on this world that we will leave behind this meme. That really is it belongs to to TSN, the Canadiens regional, because when Matheson would do something cool, he would yell Magic Mike, and I was like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Tragic Mike was what I brought to the party, and I hope we don't see it all that much, and it doesn't look like we will. Like, by this point last year, Mike Matheson would have had one game where he was a stinker. He's played 3 and they've all been great. Like, I mean, obviously it's unrealistic to expect that every game is going to be an
Amazing.
absolute dime from him.
Mm-hmm.
But like, we're crushing it. He looks great.
He looks great. He looks great. Who else looks great? Oliver Kapanen. Let's talk about that guy.
Yeah. Another one that like had a great camp. That's why he's here, is because he won camp. He doesn't look out of place on that line. The first 2 games, there was really just him and Bolduc scoring. Well, I'll talk about Bolduc in a second. I really like Kapanen. I really like the fact that he's just stepped into this lineup and is, he played a lot of hockey last year.
Yeah.
Started in Montreal, went to Laval, came back to Montreal for the playoffs, finished the season in Laval in the playoffs, came back for training camp, played a bunch in the preseason, played, he's just playing a lot, and it's showing off. Like, he's, Marty always talks about his computer and the way that he thinks and sees the game as it rolls out in front of him. It's undeniable that this guy thinks the game at an NHL caliber, and it's just a matter of the speed of his talents catching up to it. I think he's getting there, man. He looks great.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, let's talk about hometown boy, Zach Bolduc. He's going to be, honestly, like, I'm excited for the welcome he's going to get at the Bell Center there on Tuesday, which, again, like, why is the home opener so late for Montreal? Why do they have to go open everyone else's arenas before they come home?
And then open theirs against Seattle. Like, it just seems odd. Bolduc was a guy who I thought had another pretty ho-hum preseason. There wasn't a lot. He ended up, tweaking his groin a little bit. He shows no ill effects of that right now. But he's scoring in ways that, two of the 3 goals he scored, he's just going to the front of the net. The one against Detroit, while yes, it's a good play from Zach Bolduc, that pass from Brendan Gallagher, I didn't know he had that. Like, a feathered area touch pass, like one-time touch pass that goes exactly where it needs to go to get Bolduc in behind the defenders. Bolduc makes a great shot, don't get me wrong, but like, Gallagher getting that puck from him, holy cow, did not know he had that in him.
That chemistry is insane.
Gallagher can play, if Gallagher could play with a well-placed trash can, and like, I know I made that joke about Carey Price too, but like, Gallagher could make any line he plays on look phenomenal. It's just the way that he plays the game is very conducive. When people talk about a glue guy, that's who they're talking about. Like, he makes any line he's on work. Think of all the lines that he's been on in his tenure in Montreal and how they're like always one of the best ones on the team, despite the fact that he is the only constant on whatever line he's on. So I think that's a big thing with that line. But look, Bolduc is making offense happening by going to the dirty areas. His power play goal against Chicago, Caulfield made a power move to the net. They just banged away at it and it went in. Like, that's kind of what they needed to do in that game. I find that Bolduc might be a secret weapon when the power play doesn't have it from a finesse and skill standpoint, where then, from the sides of the net, Caulfield or Slafkovsky can just put it into the crease and just let Bolduc go to work and bang away at it and try to put it in. Yeah. I think that's a recipe for success in a game where maybe they wouldn't have it, like that Chicago game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I just, through 3 games, like, there's not a whole lot that, like, you can be too bummed about. I would be concerned if, after 10 games, we're still having the same conversations. Or we're not having the same conversations about, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, et cetera, et cetera. All right, Ian, are you ready for trivia?
Yeah, let's do it.
Did you hear the trivia question from last week, or are you hearing this for the first time?
I did not. I have been sequestered. So the only time I've let myself out is to watch the games.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you the question, which you might know. How many NHL trophies are named after former Habs, and who was the last Canadiens player to win each one?
Huh.
Yeah.
So the Vezina, which
Yes.
is Carey Price.
Yes.
That's really tough.
Okay. Do you want the answer?
I couldn't name another one. Yeah, do
Okay.
'em.
So the Hart, which was also last won by Carey Price. The
No,
Selke,
he
which
was a
was
Canadian.
what?
Didn't know that was a
Yeah,
Canadian.
I know. I had to double check this because there were a lot of guesses of some other ones too, like the Bill Masterton and all that. So I had to double check this. Thank you, Kyle Roberts, by the way, for this question. The Hart was also last one by Carey Price. The Selke was last one by Guy Carbonneau. So it's been a
Guy Carbonneau would have
while.
been my guess for the Selke. But I
It's
didn't know he was a Canadian. That's incredible.
it's been a while. So Nick Suzuki, you're up. And the Rocket, which is a trick question, the Rocket Richard Trophy, because the Canadiens have never won it.
Yeah. It's I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't remember that the Rocket Richard was named after, Rocket Richard.
Rocket Richard, and that the Canadiens have never won it. All right, so
Maybe that's why I forgot about it in the sense that they've never had that trophy. Maybe one day.
Okay, so today we talked a lot about the power play. So that's kind of like a theme. It's a follow that player trivia question today. This is just the NHL teams. Obviously, as always, when we do these, we don't do like any of their like junior teams or if they like went to Europe in the lockout or whatever. So this one is Montreal Canadiens, then the New York Islanders, then Philadelphia Flyers, then Pittsburgh Penguins, then Montreal Canadiens. So that is your trivia question for today. If you know the answer, please leave it in the YouTube comments, or you can send it to us on social media or at Gmail. We're lockedoncanadians@gmail.com. You'll find us at Locked On Canadians on TikTok, on Instagram, and on Blue Sky. So you can leave the question. You can leave the trivia answers there. I'll answer it for you guys tomorrow, along with another new trivia question. And then finally, you can follow us in all those places. Please ensure you are subscribed to this podcast. We are 5 days a week. We're talking about your Montreal Canadiens. We're here for you. It's going to be a fun season. So please, please, please stick around. You'll find me. Also, you can send mailbag questions at all those places I just mentioned. You can find me on social media at The Active Stick. You can find my co-host at Maybe It's Ian. I want to thank everyone so much for listening. I will definitely be back tomorrow, and Ian will be back later this week.